All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and continue our lecture on World War II from Thursday. We'll try to get through as much as we can today, but we're not going to finish World War II until tomorrow. So just stay with me while we get through this all. We previously talked about, quiet down, folks, everyone. We previously talked about military mobilization, gentlemen. We talked about Selective Service Act, how that ultimately got a lot of people to join the military, 18 through 65. We also talked about how women joined the Air Force, WACs, WAVs, and WAFs as pilots, technical experts, whatever. I did find this image over the weekend to show you that women weren't just simply, be on the sidelines. They're actually involved in the war as well. Here are women in gas masks in the heart of combat. And again, they might be entering the war effort trying to pull injured soldiers out. They might be entering the war effort to fix machines. They might have been driving the jeeps or the planes. So again, it wasn't just women simply on the sidelines. Women were actively participating and putting their own lives in danger as well. Quiet down, gentlemen. They are wearing shorts there. In any case, we also talked about economic mobilization. We talked about the Office of War Mobilization, the role that they played regulating the U.S. economy. And we talked about the War Production Board and the immense amounts of items that they produced. Ultimately, they produced twice as much as all their enemies combined. I think we ended with that, right? Now, here's some of the propaganda images used during that time to get them to produce more. Bowl them over, more production. So that's Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo. America is the loser too when avoidable accidents stop production. So again, work quickly, but don't work so quickly that you get injured. They want you to work quickly, but not get hurt. Also bundles for Berlin, make those bombs quickly so we can bomb Berlin or Germany. Crack the Axis. So who's holding hands in this image here? So Uncle Sam and who's holding? Those are the workers, right? The gloves that they use when they're operating heavy machinery. And there they are. If they push their hands together, they'll be able to crack the nut of the Axis powers. And so what did we produce, guys? We produced 40 billion bullets. We produced 300,000 aircraft. We produced 76,000 ships, 86,000 tanks, and 2.6 million machine guns. When we talk about winning this war, we won because we outproduced our enemy. 40 billion bullets, 300,000 aircraft, 76,000 ships, 86,000 tanks, 2.6 million machine guns. That's a lot. That is quite a bit. And when you look, one of the planes that we did build is this pretty looking plane on the bottom left here. That is a fighter plane in pink. Now, did they paint that plane that way just because it was pretty? The answer is no. In fact, this pink plane was designed to fly only during sunrise and sunset to blend in with the haze in the background. And so again, they began to use this type of these different types of paint jobs and camouflage to create the illusion, and it became a stealth plane. You never think of pink being a good stealth plane, but when you're flying at that specific time during sunrise or sunset, the haze of the hues coming in the sky at that time would allow us to blend in pretty well with the light oranges and reds and purples of that early morning or late evening. But they also began to paint their planes and ships in these crazy color designs, if you notice here. And we called that paint design Razzle Dazzle. Razzle Dazzle was a paint style used during World War II to confuse the enemy. You have to understand, during World War II, when we're shooting planes, we're not using any type of lock-on technology. It's by sight. And so the idea is when you see these paint designs throughout, it's supposed to confuse you as to which direction is the plane actually going. You have stripes going upwards, downwards, left and right. You have some color this way, other colors that way. I mean, is this the front of the plane? Is that the front of the plane? Because remember, it's going really fast, so you have to decide, is it moving to the left or to the right? And also the different sizes in those stripes and lines. I mean, is that plane Does that plane have really small lines and therefore it's really far away? Or does it have really big lines and therefore really close up? These types of things were designed to create an illusion to confuse gunners of how far these ships and planes actually were. Really good example, and here's a modern example of a retrofitted and restored fighter pilot, again, with that razzle-dazzle style of paint job. If you're seeing that from the top, you're going to be confused as to what to lock onto. Same idea for ships. Battleships were also painted with the razzle-dazzle style. So if you're looking at this ship, I mean, is it really far and therefore that's why it has really narrow lines? Is it really close, therefore big lines? I mean, where does the ship start? Where does it end? I mean, that is the question. If you look really far away, you wouldn't even know. I mean, some of the lines are going upwards, some of them are going downwards, or zigzag left and right. And this will create an optical illusion for you. When you see this from afar, you don't know what's part of the ship and what's just random lines going which way. And it wasn't even black and white, guys. The razzle-dazzle ship was designed in bright colors. So really far away, you might think that only the yellow parts are the ship, or only the blue parts are the ship, or only the purple parts are the ship. And when you stand from a distance trying to fire at this, you're going to have a really hard time trying to gauge what you're actually shooting. This becomes really problematic. Here again is another example of razzle-dazzle on another ship. And again, the SS War Penguin, here are the different types of styles they were going to use. But I like to point your attention to the last one here. Because if you notice, the red and the black really stand out, right? And so it's really easy to see this ship and forget that this is part of the ship too. You've pretty much taken the ship and made it look smaller. And so that target that you're shooting is now what, 20 feet smaller now? And that's a big difference when your ship is only 80 feet. And so now all you have to shoot is this because you think that's all that left. Because you could try shooting this, but you might not see it because your eyes are not focused on this bright red and black. And so again, razzle-dazzle tends up saving a lot of people's lives because when you're trying to shoot things by sight alone, that becomes pretty problematic. So again, how many of you guys were familiar with razzle-dazzle before this? Anyone? Razzle-dazzle, you rarely see ships today doing this because there's no need. We have laser-guided missiles, heat signatures, whatever. But back then, when you're relying on eyesight, optical illusions like this were designed to trick the gunners into saving American and Allied lives. Then we have the importance of secrecy and public support. So in order to make sure that this war effort was successful, one, we had to be secretive, but two, we had to get people to go along with the war effort. So again, one, keep your mouth shut. Don't be a sucker, because what happens if you talk? You might get caught, and who might catch you? The Japs or the Germans. They might catch you. And so when it came down to it, if you say you're a soldier, we're probably going to invade Poland on Thursday, and the Germans find out about that, that's not good, because what do we suspect? Who do we suspect are everywhere? Spies, German spies, and there were German spies everywhere. Here also the idea is that we need to get people to work, conserve materials, because if we do, we can stop who? The Japanese. So, recycle, do victory gardens, that kind of thing. Here again, the Tokyo Kid says, good material waste in scrap to help saving face for Jap. If you don't recycle, who benefits? The Japanese. So it's good for that. Don't recycle, because I'm happy when you don't recycle. I like that. And of course, don't step on it, hurry up. Men 30 to 50, make sure I have way too many pens on this table. I'm just picking up the wrong pen over and over again. Again, the basic idea is, men 30 to 50, join, step up, join the war effort. Stop waiting, get ready to beat Hitler and go, enlist now. Also, loose talk can cost lives. So again, here you are trying to impress your girlfriend, and here's Hitler right next to you listening, to what's going on. Because he's a spy. So again, they might hear all the stories going on, so you want to make sure that you're being careful about what's going on. Also, men going off to fight, be careful. Those women might be booby traps. They might have syphilis and gonorrhea. And so the idea was, the Germans, they might try to trick you. They might try to send in women that will make you sick and diseased. So be careful of that. But really it was more like, don't get distracted. Keep fighting the war. Don't worry about the women. But it's not really the issue. The Germans were intentionally giving women gonorrhea and syphilis. It was more just like, How can we get the men to focus on fighting and not get distracted by all the women? This is one of the ways that they did it. Now, so women participating in this war effort became symbolized by Rosie the Riveter. And Rosie the Riveter came to symbolize the 5 million women that joined the labor force. So Rosie the Riveter came to symbolize the 5 million women that joined the labor force. And again, when we talk about outproducing our allied enemies, our Axis enemies, who really helped in that effort? Women. Women were the ones who produced those 40 billion bullets. They're the ones who produced the 86,000 planes. And so when we talk about who won the war effort, women played a huge role in that effort. 5 million women joined the workforce. And they're called riveters, folks, because they would rivet. Are you guys familiar with the term, what a rivet is? You know what a rivet is? A rivet is a specific kind of nail where instead of having one long nail, it actually has 2 nails on the bottom, like this. And this cap has like a tip at the top of it. And what happens is you smash that cap in, and when you do that, these nails go out to the side. So the idea is that, when you're normally hammering a nail, just goes straight in. Well, a rivet, you have nothing to hammer into. You're just trying to put 2 metal plates together. So you put that nail in, and when you push it in, the nail goes like this. Like that. And so the basic idea is that when we put the nail, it goes like that, and so it'll hold the metal and the nail together. Those are called rivets. So you smash it in, and it was their job to make the ships, the planes, whatever else. And so they became known as Rosie the Riveter. That was the slogan used for women. When women joined the workforce, their wages increased dramatically. So they had a dramatic increase in wages. Because again, are their jobs important? Yeah. And do we want to keep them happy? Yeah. Sure. So women entered the war industry workforce, and they began to make a lot of money. Now, are they going to make as much as men? No, but they'll make 2/3 of a man's salary, which is much better than before, which was about 1/4. And so they're now going to make 2/3 of a man's salary, which is pretty good at this time. Because many women are now working in the workforce, you see the rise of World War II daycare centers. Why might this be a factor? Yeah, because if all the women are working, who's going to take care of the children? And so grandparents begin to enter, and senior citizens will start taking care of it. If you're too old to work, you still might be old enough to be able to care for children. And so now you have, grandparents and the elderly starting to take care of children, playing their role during World War II. So that's pretty significant. Eventually, when the war ends, women were forced to go back home. Why? Because men wanted their jobs back. Not that they weren't needed; they could still work, but men wanted the jobs back, and so women were forced to go back home and lose all that pay they had made. But women were forced to go back home, and thus you see the return of what? What do we call that? But what do we call that? What is it, Brenda? The cult of domesticity. You see the return of the cult of domesticity. Again, this is our 4th time, I think, now. You see the return of the cult of domesticity? Because men want their jobs back, so women have to leave the workforce. And again, the problem is the women will lose all those wages that they made. And all the work that the women played during World War II is going to be forgotten. They say, thanks for all the work that you did. Now, I'm kind of hungry. Can you go home and make me pot roast? That's kind of the expectation, Thanks for all the work. Now go home and wait for me when you get there. So all that sexism kind of returns again, and it's not very good for American society. Now, you have the War Labor Board. Now you have the War Labor Board. The War Labor Board's job is to prevent strikes. The War Labor Board's job is to prevent strikes by protecting workers' wages. So the War Labor Board is going to prevent strikes by protecting workers' wages, just like what other organization during World War I? The National War Labor Board. They're almost exactly the same. So when I have you eventually compare World War I and World War II, you'll see a lot of similarities. But again, their job was to prevent strikes By protecting workers' wages. By protecting workers' wages. So again, who's together in this photo here? Who's this hand right here? Uncle Sam, who's that? Who's that? Not unions. Businesses, employers, right? Like the suit. It's the suit shaking the hand, the employers shaking the hand of labor, and Uncle Sam, is trying to get his hand in there also. Like, me too. There's no three-way handshakes, guys. It's impossible. He should have done like this. So again, of course, you do have the propaganda, the Japanese like, go ahead, please take a day off. Because when you take a day off, I win. So again, you have these very racist depictions, caricatures of Japanese Americans at the time. So again, no, please take a day off. For me, take a day off. Also, I like this picture. Again, do you see a lot of this during World War I also? Like you have soldiers and workers standing side by side. Here, give them both barrels. Here, they're using a machine gun. What kind of gun are they using here? A rivet gun, not the one from BioShock. Different rivet gun. Video game reference. My apologies. Then you have the Office of Economic Stabilization. The Office of Economic Stabilization. The Office of Economic Stabilization's job was to fight inflation. Their job was to fight inflation. So in order to fight inflation, because prices were rising, because are people getting higher wages during the war? Yeah, well, because people are getting higher wages, prices will rise. And it was rising too fast. And so their job was to fight inflation by freezing prices. They froze prices. They said prices cannot go above this point, and actually they locked prices in. So they fought inflation, and they locked or froze prices. They also began mandatory rationing. They began mandatory rationing. What does that mean? You're only allowed to eat so much, buy so much, use so much. There was required mandatory rationing, and it applied to everyone. Now, was there mandatory rationing during World War I? No, there was not. There was voluntary rationing during World War I. In World War II, there's mandatory rationing. So you probably should note World War I was voluntary, but World War II is mandatory. Okay, there is a big difference. World War I is like, it'd be nice if you conserved. World War II, you don't have a choice, because they introduced a certificate and coupon book system. They introduced certificates and coupon books. And the basic idea is if you wanted to buy a car, for example, you had to go to the local rationing board and get permission to buy a car. You might already have the money, but you had to get a certificate to buy a car. And then you could go to the dealership and like, okay, so I have a certificate to buy a car. Can I buy a car now? Say, okay, fine, give us the money and the certificate, we'll sell you a car. But if you don't have a certificate, even though you have the money, you can't buy cars. The same went with coupon books. Every month you would get a coupon book with the amount of flour and meat and eggs you could buy. And if you had all the money in the world, could you buy everything in the store? You could only buy however many coupons you had. So for a family of 3, you might have different needs than a family of 4. But the problem is, might you sometimes have extra at the end of the month still? So what they also tried to fight was black market sales. They also tried to fight black market sales. Because many people think, oh, if my kids don't like eggs, I'm still going to get the eggs, but I'm going to sell them at a higher price. So they tried to also fight black market sales. They are trying to fight inflation. We'll take care of the rising sun. You take care of rising prices. Yeah. I'm out to lick runaway prices. Let's all follow the 7-key plan to hold prices down. And then there's the Office of Price Administration that was part of the OES. It was part of the Office of Economic Stabilization. And again, the idea here is that, they want to regulate precious materials or precious resources. They want to regulate precious resources like fuel, gas, that kind of thing. But they also wanted to fight inflation. Their good job is also to fight inflation. And so what are they encouraging? Carpooling. Because if you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Ride with 4 friends, then you ride with your friends. But if you're driving by yourself, you're wasting gas, you ride with Hitler. I drive a hybrid, so I can drive by myself and it's cool. I ride with Mother Nature. But yeah, again, another key example. Mandatory rationing we talked about already. But again, in this top image here, what happens without rationing? Yeah, there's not enough for everyone. That woman bought everything. But with rationing, everyone is happy. Everyone gets enough. It's kind of like communism, yeah. It's like communism to a degree. Because again, if you have more money, should you be allowed to buy more? But they're saying not during wartime, which makes sense. Again, rationing safeguards your share. So yes, you may not get a lot, but you still will get some next week because everyone won't get a lot. Again, of course I can. She's not worried about ration points because, she rations. And what else is she doing? She's jarring and canning her foods. Again, food is a weapon. Don't waste it. Again, to let you know. Again, we talk about don't eat all your chicken to the bone. Save every morsel. We have lots to eat this winter, won't we, Mother? Grow your own, can your own. So you see the return of what? Victory gardens, canning your own food. So they start using victory gardens during World War II as well. So you should note victory gardens are being used during World War II as well. And of course, Superman, Batman, and Superman are also in favor of victory gardens. So to encourage kids to kind of, convince their parents to grow victory gardens at school or at home, they say, look, Batman, Superman, and Robin are doing their part. So should you. Now, if I were a kid at this time, I'd be like, them working on victory gardens is great. But if I was Superman, I think my time would be better used fighting Nazis. Don't get me wrong. Growing food is fine. But I'm pretty sure he could kill Hitler in one punch. So what is he doing growing cabbage? When he should be off fighting in Germany. Really, what is stopping him?
Because he's on his face. He's angry about it.
And he's like, why am I doing this? No, Robin does not wear pants. Not before. He works tights. Leotards. Anyway, folks, how much did all of this production cost us? In 1941, the U.S. budget was $49 billion, which is here. By 1945, the U.S. debt was $259 billion. So yeah, it cost us a lot, this war. A lot. This war cost us. So again, our debt was $49 billion. In 1941, by 1945, our debt was $259 billion. And again, because, we produced 86,000 tanks and 40 billion bullets. So where did all that money go? It went into producing these things. A while. Remember, a lot of the stuff, though, we had to get paid back. Because we were producing stuff for the British and the French. They have to pay us back also. So we were just producing stuff, and were we getting paid back right away? We said, no, pay us back after the war, because this is all part of what? All that stuff we were producing was part of Lend-Lease. Exactly. It's all part of Lend-Lease. So we'll get all that money back eventually. The Smith-Connolly Anti-Strike Act was also passed. Why was this passed? To prevent strikes, obviously. Now, the Anti-Strike Act was designed to prevent strikes, and they threatened government takeover if you went on strike. So if management and business, or management and workers, if you guys can't work together, the government's going to take over your industry. And then when we take over your industry, we're going to hire soldiers to work. So if you can't get along, that's fine by us, but we're going to take over your industry. So Smith-Connolly Anti-Strike Act, again, yeah, it threatened government intervention, it threatened government takeover if they went on strike. Because again, our strike's good. Not during wartime. If it's not wartime, whatever, we can go on strike, it happens. But during wartime, you might stop producing super fortresses. You might stop producing B-52 bombers, and we need those at the time. Well, probably not. There's probably already 40,000 waiting in line. But in our mindset, we have to keep producing because, we have a lot more. Also, we got to pay for this war. So how do we pay for it? Treasury Department. And what will they use to pay this war? They will start selling?
Babies.
Not selling babies. War bonds. And they'll also increase? Not tariffs. Taxes. Taxes and war bonds will pay for this war. So the Treasury Department will increase taxes and war bond sales to pay for this war. You buy them, we'll fly them. War bonds. They flew stamps. Not a very good military strategy.
Explosive stuff?
Yes. So Treasury Department. Good? So again, a lot of similarities to World War I?
Yeah.
Definitely. Talk about discrimination during World War II. Was there discrimination? Actually, no. Actually, yes. A lot of discrimination. No, they're still segregated. We had 500,000 troops join the army, and they're segregated still. Truman, the next president, will desegregate the military eventually.
We're the first to have concentration camps.
Hmm?
We're the first to have concentration camps.
Internment camp, sure. We'll talk about that. And so you had the Second Great Northern Migration. In the Second Great Northern Migration, who moved where? Black Americans moved to some California, but mostly to the north. Why? Jobs. Why were there jobs available in the north? Factory jobs. Why are there so many available factory jobs? Because there's war and whites are going off to fight. And so again, you had the Second Great Northern Migration, similar to World War I? Yes, it is. Now, just like World War I, what happens when a lot of black Americans move into a city to try to get jobs? Race riot. And so you'll also see the rise of the Detroit race riots. 25 people will end up being killed. It causes, I think, $6 million worth of damage in Detroit. It's pretty expensive. 25 people are killed. Oh, $2 million in damage. But again, it's a riot and that happens and that's not good, but 25 people died. Oh, no. It's just a street lamp. Then you have A. Philip Randolph. A. Philip Randolph, he was the president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Okay. What happened was that the blacks felt that they were being mistreated, they needed more rights or access to jobs, and so A. Philip Randolph, who's president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, he makes three demands, or he makes a few demands. He demands the following, or else the blacks will go on strike. He says, one, we want equal access for blacks in war industries. They wanted equal access for blacks in war industries. Why do they want access to war industries? Well, jobs, yes, but there's jobs elsewhere. I mean, why equal access to war industries? Better pay. It's better pay. Much, much, much better pay. And so they want equal access to war industries for blacks. Secondly, they want a desegregation of the military and federal government. So military and federal government. So the IRS, the State Department, Department of Interior, those also have to be desegregated. So they want desegregation of the military and federal government. If not, he threatened a March on Washington movement. So that's MAUM. If not, he threatened a March on Washington movement, or MAUM. There's like 5 of them, so just every time someone marches on Washington, it's just MAUM. Bonus Army, MAUM. Coxey's Army, MAUM. This guy threatened MAUM. March on Washington movement. Because of what he's fighting for, he becomes known as the father of the civil rights movement. He will inspire people like Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, Rosa Parks to kind of start standing up for themselves. He's the father of the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement hasn't even begun yet. He's already fighting for civil rights for blacks. Well, does FDR want these blacks to march on Washington in the middle of a war? Absolutely not. So FDR says, okay, fine, and he creates the FEPC. FDR creates the Fair Employment Practices Committee in response. And what this guarantees is equal access to war industries. The FEPC guaranteed equal access to war industries. Now, he's not going to desegregate the military yet because we're in the middle of a war, but the FEPC does guarantee equal access to war industries. So did they get something? They're like, okay, that's really what we wanted. The desegregation can happen after the war. So they didn't march, but they threatened to march. So again, equal access to war industries. Yay. Cool.
What do they mean right to work is taken away from this?
Labor unions. You know, like the idea is that, you know, like if you fire one teacher for like doing something, let's say like I got fired for, I don't know, using a tablet PC, then the next teacher could get fired. Am I doing anything wrong here? No, but you know, if you fire one person, you're next because that gate has been opened. Then we talk about Mexicans. Not Mexican Americans, just Mexicans. We had the Bracero program. The Bracero program gave short-term permits for Mexicans to work on U.S. farms. It provided short-term permits for Mexicans to work on U.S. farms. Short-term work permits for Mexicans to work on U.S. farms. Now, many of these Mexicans wanted to do what after their permits were up? Stay, but they weren't allowed, and so they were forced to go back home after. But why did we need this to happen during World War II? Yeah, all the workers were fighting in the war, so we need to import Mexican workers to grow the food. So that's the Bracero program. You know, we imported Mexicans to work on the farms. Then also with Mexican Americans, you had the Zoot Suit riots in Los Angeles. Now, the Zoot Suit riots were between the Zoot Suits, which were Mexican Americans, or young Mexican Americans, that dressed like this. Those are called Zoot Suits. They're long, baggy Mexican coats, or just regular coats, by Mexican Americans. And the basic idea is that it was very baggy. They would maybe wear like a gold chain pocket watch, that kind of thing, but they were called the Zoot Suits. And what happened was that these Mexican Americans began getting attacked by white sailors. So a race riot begins between whites and Mexican Americans because they're being attacked by white sailors. And primarily what this is being caused by is stupid machismo between just men. And pretty much what happened was that the whites were angry that the Mexican Americans were hitting on white women. And then they were like, no, you can't have that. And then so they began to fight over that. Like, you know, you are disgracing our blood and heritage and whatever. So a riot broke out between white sailors and Mexicans, Americans, and that's the Zoot Suit riots here in LA. No one really won, but it got really violent. No one really won here. It got broken up eventually, but yeah. And then you have the Code Talkers. You probably read about this a little bit last night. The Code Talkers were who? Native Americans. And they were mostly the Navajo. So the Navajo Indians were these code talkers, and the idea was that they were able to communicate without their code being deciphered. They could talk in code. And really, it wasn't even a code, it was them talking to each other in their own language, in native language. And the reason why it was so effective is, I mean, you tell me, are there very many Navajo Indians in Japan? Or very many Navajo Indians in Germany? No, not so much. And so they would put Navajo Indians on like several ships, and be, hey, tell Fred that we're coming on Thursday at 6, and we're bringing like 3,000 troops. All right, you got it. And he would say it in Navajo, and the Japanese were like, what are they saying? Quick, get a code breaker here now! But it wasn't a substitution. It wasn't they didn't need a codex or anything. It was literally another language. So you can't break that code unless you do a word substitution. And so they saved a lot of lives.
So were people supposed to learn the language, or it was the Native Americans?
No, they used Native Americans to communicate with each other. And so they would send them on, like Native Americans became, Navajo especially became very important because we wanted native speakers to be able to be on different ships and bases so they could communicate. Very, very unique. And then of course you have the Japanese Americans. So the Japanese Americans, After Pearl Harbor, what was the belief?
Spies, no?
They're spies and saboteurs that once they attacked Pearl Harbor, all the Japanese in America would begin attacking us. So that was the fear. Okay, every Japanese was a potential danger. And so in 1942, we began Japanese internment. Actually, a lot of California, Utah, Washington, Oregon, a lot of different places. And so the Japanese internment began on February 19th, 1942. And what happened was that FDR issues Executive Order 9066. He signs Executive Order 9066 that says all persons of Japanese ancestry must be interned. All persons of Japanese ancestry must be interned. Interned. And by interned means we're going to put them in those internment camps. Yeah, they forced them to leave. We interned over 110,000 Japanese in 10 camps across 7 states. Those camps included Mandazar, Heart Mountain, there's a few others I always forget. But again, 10 camps across 7 states interned. And they were only given 48 hours notice. Yeah, so imagine that. If I tell you in 48 hours you have to pack up everything and you're going to be gone for until the end of the war, which by the way will last about 3 years. So you're going to pack up everything that you can because we're going to pick you up in 2 days. You have to report to the sorting station. So bring what you can carry, but that's it. So then what they would do is they would pack up their homes, they'd board up their businesses, they'd board up their homes, and they would leave. Because only had 2 days. And they hoped that their homes would be there when they got back. Then they went to the sorting stations, and they were separated and broken up into these 10 camps. Ultimately, folks, unfortunately, when the war is over and they go back to their homes and businesses, likely their homes were trashed, furniture stolen, stuff was taken, their businesses, people had broken into and stolen all their goods. I mean, their stuff was destroyed. All their jobs that they lost, they just lost them. And the government said, well, we're sorry about that. But that's it. Not a, sorry, here's the money that you lost, here's money for your homes. No, it's just, I'm sorry. You know, thanks for taking the bullet for us, though. And so Fred Korematsu was upset about this because he was a Japanese American. So Fred Korematsu said, no, this is not right. I'm an American citizen. I was born here. You can't just take away my rights. And so he sues, and the case goes all the way up to the Supreme Court in Korematsu v. U.S. And in the Supreme Court case of Korematsu v. U.S., the Supreme Court rules that internment camps are what? Are constitutional. Supreme Court rules, unfortunately, yes, you are an American citizen, and while yes, you do have civil rights, unfortunately, internment camps are constitutional during wartime. During wartime. So I'm sorry. Can we suspend civil rights during wartime now? According to the Supreme Court, we can. So people always ask, Mr. King, can this happen today? And the answer is obviously yes. You know, there's all those narco traffickers in Mexico selling drugs and whatever else. Imagine if they get so mad at the U.S. for trying to stop their drug sales that they begin launching terrorist attacks on the U.S. Well, then likely what's going to happen is they will round up all the Mexican Americans. They'll deport anyone that is not here legally, and they'll put you in internment camps. Because that could happen. It's not half, but it's still possible. I mean, still a lot of Japanese Americans that they interned. In any case, eventually, quiet down, by 1945, you had the end of internment in 1945. And the Japanese are slowly beginning to be released by 1945. You have the end of internment by 1945. But But the losses were staggering. The Japanese lost their homes and businesses. They lost over $105 million in farms and over $500 million in income in those 3 years. They lost banks, businesses, $105 million in farmland, $500 million in income. And again, the federal government didn't come in and say, yeah, sorry about that, we'll give you your money back. No, they didn't. They just said, guess we're going to have to start over. Sorry. And by the way, at the very end, after all the investigations, there was not a single act of sabotage by a Japanese American. Not a single one was done by a Japanese American. So in 1988, we felt kind of bad. We're like, yeah, we probably screwed up there. So 43 years later, in 1988, Ronald Reagan passes Japanese reparations, where we give the Japanese community $1.25 billion to anyone that lived in an internment camp. The idea was, shh, guys, quiet down. Gentlemen, the idea was we were going to give every Japanese intern $20,000. And we would begin paying them in 1990. And that payment would last over 10 years. So $2,000 a year. Now, the internment began in 1942. So the payment begins in 1988. It's going to be 48 years before they actually start getting paid. Now, were these all Japanese be like born in the concentration camp? Were they all born there and therefore they'd be 50 by the time payments began? Some of them were 30, 20, 50, 80. No? Yeah, some of them were dead already. Some of them were going to die in the 10 years that reparations would begin. And so while this was in good faith, we want to be sorry for everything, did the U.S. fully intend to pay all reparations back? Not at all. No, I mean, they knew that extending it by 10 years, extending it by another 2 years, they wouldn't have to pay the full 1.25 back. But it looks good on paper. We're going to pay those that we wronged back $1.25 billion, if you're alive. Not to your relatives, not to your descendants, just you. And if you die, that's it. Your wife doesn't get it, you don't get it. Yes? I mean, there's lists. There's lists. Let's talk about the Warfront, and then we'll be done. Or we'll talk quickly about the Warfront. And the next thing I'm going to talk about actually has nothing to do with U.S. history. It's just a story that's kind of interesting. So just write down the Warfront, and we'll finish this lecture off on Tuesday. But here's the story. First, I'll actually write this down also. Key battles in European theater. Key battles in the European theater. Okay, so let's talk about the story of the USS William D. Porter. You don't actually have to know about this ship. But there are about 12 different things that are pretty crazy that happened during World War II that happened to the exact same ship. Okay? So, the USS Porter. First story that happened. So the USS Porter, the day that it left port, forgot to raise its anchor, and so it dragged its anchor all the way out of the harbor, dragged it over 11 ships, and caused over $6 million in damage. Because they forgot to raise their anchor. They actually dragged it across the deck of one of its sister ships, the anchor. So that's day one. They're like, oops, all right, well, off to battle. And so the next thing they were supposed to do is they were tasked with actually protecting FDR during the secret Atlanta conference. You guys remember that? It was a secret conference. So they were one of the ships surrounding the USS Iowa where FDR was. So while they were just sailing around the USS Iowa protecting it, they accidentally activated one of the depth charges. A depth charge is a bomb that you drop into the water to sink submarines. Well, one of them turned on accidentally. It rolled off the side of the boat and right next to the president's ship. And so it exploded in the water, and luckily the USS Iowa did not sink, but they were like, what? You almost killed the president. They're like, okay, why don't you guys just move further to the side away from the president of the United States? So that's the first time they almost killed the president. Then, while they're on the outside, on the outskirts of the ship, a wave comes in and kind of knocks the entire convoy. But they're the only ship where the wave actually shuts down their boiler, and they're dead in the water for like 3 days. So the boiler room gets shut down. Even though there's 12 other ships, they're the only one whose boiler gets damaged. Well, eventually, the USS Iowa is asked by FDR to show off that it can defend itself because the USS Porter looks stupid. Can you defend yourself? They're like, yeah, sure. So they do a training, and they launch up these air balloons, and they show them how they can shoot them down. Well, USS Porter says, well, this is our chance to prove ourselves. So any of the extra balloons that are not shot down, the USS Porter starts shooting them. And they're like, also, let's show them what happens if submarines start attacking us. So they start launching fake torpedoes. Fake torpedo, launch torpedo 1, pew, fake torpedo. Launch torpedo 2, pew, fake torpedo. Launch torpedo 3, pew, real torpedo. And they launch a live torpedo at the president's ship. So it's going straight at the USS Iowa. There's a torpedo shot. Now, the entire time it's radio silence because they can't get on the radios because the Germans might hear. And this might be a good time to break radio silence because the torpedo's coming after the president. But they're like, no, I'm sure we can communicate this. So they grab the flags. And they begin to tell them with the flags, go forward, because there's a torpedo coming at you. But instead, they tell them to go the wrong way, and it's on the back up into the torpedo. They're like, oh my God, they're going the wrong way. So they break radio silence, and they tell them to go forward, and they narrowly miss the president. The entire time, Secret Service is like, oh my God, we're going to die. We have to protect the president. So they take out their pistols, and they try shooting the torpedo as it's coming at them. Luckily, it misses them. So the president requests that the USS Porter go out to Alaska where they can't kill anybody. So they send them off to Alaska just to hang out there for a while because they can't kill the president when they're there. So that happens, and then one day one of the crew officers gets really drunk, gets behind a cannon and shoots it. The shell lands in the yard of the commander of the base that they're stationed at the time. And the unfortunate part is not only that they destroy the yard, but at the time that that shell landed, they had a party going on that had all the top generals and their wives in the house. So they almost killed the top brass of the U.S. military. Well, near the end of the war, they're like, let's get the ship involved in the fight. So they send the USS Porter in to actually start firing, and they do a pretty good job. They actually start winning the battles, whatever else, and eventually the kamikazes get desperate. They start, slamming their planes into the ships. Well, they start shooting these down. They do pretty well, and the kamikaze comes after them, and it misses them. They shoot it down, and it lands. It hits the water right in front of them. They're like, yes, we survived. But that ship keeps going, and here's the ship. It goes, they shoot it. It lands underneath. And then it explodes underneath the ship, and it sinks the USS Porter, which is the only ship ever sunk by a kamikaze plane that did not hit it. The kamikaze plane did not hit the ship, and it still sank. So that's the story of the USS Porter. Huh? Yes, but this is the story of the USS Porter, the ship that had a ridiculous history during World War II. All during World War II, and the ship sank. Actually, they almost arrested them all. They arrested them all for almost killing the president with a torpedo, and then they let them go. One of them had to work in hard labor. The one who actually fired the torpedo. But yep, that's that. Make sure you guys turn in chapter 35, 36 tomorrow if you haven't finished it already, and then wait till the bell rings, and you guys can go. I don't know if they're all named after presidents, but I imagine most of them are. I want to say yes, but I don't think that's true. They might also be named after states. Yeah, and then we'll do. No, I mean, I think we ultimately decided we're just gonna do that in ASB. It's just too hard to move all the tables around. Hey, Paulina.
Yes.
Yeah, you bring something for me? Huh? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, very good. Come on.
You're so expensive.
Well, yeah. Then wait till you go to college.
Well, I already spent like $500 for college, and I don't even go to college yet.
Yeah, then wait till you're in college.
Oh, do I
And then there's all more money. Oh no, I haven't shown them yet.
Wait till you pay bills.
Yeah, exactly. Wait till you have a mortgage.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And then student loans.
Still, wait till you're planning a wedding.
Yeah, exactly. Wait till you buy a house, have mortgages and student loans all at the same time. Then come talk to me.
You would just love to pay $500.
Yeah, like really only $500?
Wow.
What else can I do with the rest of my salary?
She's doing Renaissance next year.
Cool.
Loser!
I'm kidding.
I was gonna do Renaissance this year too, just to see what they did. Make Renaissance better.
What did you learn?
So Mr. King,
So my
start
senior
all
year's
over again with the radio station? Just pretty much it's the first one.
No, you don't. No, you only do the third and fourth.
Oh,
You do the
really?
third
I thought
week.
It was every week.
No, that's way too much. You do the
That
third. You do the third week, the week before, and then the Friday up.
Okay. Alright, I get
Yeah, that way, because it's too much. I don't want you to get there every day just doing nothing.
it. Alright.
Okay, so today you guys are gonna do your PowerPoints, and then
Oh, I go today, right?
I believe so. Yes, we'll do PowerPoints, and then we'll give out tickets for power lessons. Francina, see if you can pull up your PowerPoint. See. Yeah. So we'll do Francine today. Nicole, do you have your PowerPoint? ¿Por qué? So, I mean, do you do what everyone else did, just presented it as is without the photos? I mean, if you have to. Better than zero.
Yeah, so your grade doesn't drop.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. So do you have it with you today or no? Okay, so we'll do that on Wednesday. Alexis, you have yours today?
Yes.
Karina, do you have your PowerPoint?
So the jump drive is on there.
Here?
I don't know which jump drive.
This one?
That's on one.
Vanessa, do you have your PowerPoint today? Okay. Rosa, let Francine try to see if her PowerPoint's on. See if she can pull up her PowerPoint or not. Oh, and we need to do bills today. So, Rosa, can you grab the bills? Thank you. Can you plug in my power cable?
You know I wouldn't be down to do.
Is there any more teachers that signed up?
3 female teachers.